I'm Sylvia Balbo. I'm an associate professor in the School of Public Health in the Division of Environmental Health Sciences, where I teach classes in toxicology and regulatory toxicology. And I'm also a PI, or a principal investigator, here at the Cancer Center, the Masonic Cancer Center, where I lead a team of around 10 people doing research in the field of chemical carcinogenesis. My team includes undergraduate students, graduate students, postdocs, and in general people that are interested in developing a toolkit or skills in the field of research in order to be able to either go to industry and work in research related to industry and pharmaceutical companies or medical industry, or they develop their skills and their expertise to become professors and continue the research work in the academic setting. Some of the people in my lab are PhD students, so they are part of a program and they're studying in order to get their PhD. Some instead are postdocs. Postdocs are usually people that have already completed their PhD program and are seeking some additional training in a different field or a slightly different field from their PhD to really broaden their toolkit and their skill set in order to then enter the workforce in the academic setting mostly with more experience and with more research background in order to become leaders and to become able to lead and to guide their own lab and their own research in an independent fashion. So the work that I have been doing as a PI comes from my own background, which started with an undergraduate study in medicinal chemistry, a PhD in medicinal chemistry, and then a postdoc that was completed first at the International Agency for Cancer Research in Lyon, where I started to expand my knowledge in chemistry towards the research in cancer, and where I started to look at how to apply my background in medicinal chemistry into the field of cancer research. And then a second postdoc where instead I came to the University of Minnesota to join a group here and really start working on how environmental exposures are interacting and interfering with the DNA and with the physiological systems in our body that then, if altered, can lead to detrimental effects and to cancer formation. When I started as a postdoc at the University of Minnesota, I really wanted to basically put together all the different things that I had learned in my previous training and bring it together to build and solidify my professional figure or my professional identity. So that's what I did here, and in 2-3 years I was able to put together basically a CV that allowed me to then apply to a position as a tenure track faculty in the School of Public Health, and to apply for a position that would allow me to get my own lab and my own independent research here at the Masonic Cancer Center. What is really beautiful in all this process is that we actually are constantly working on research projects that, if they are your passion, really are all encompassing. And so you're not really feeling like you're just studying and getting trained for something that will make you ready for the next level. You're feeling like you're leaving your own research dream in a way from the very beginning. And that helps being passionate, helps being motivated, and helps also having the opportunity to do something that has a meaningful outcome and an impact on public health. And so that also helps in making this all path worth it and fulfilling and just part of a growing career. So I would never think about all these steps as a training that helps you then get somewhere. These are training that are really forming your, as I said, your professional figure, your professional identity, and allow you to have the tools and the skill sets to then go in the direction that you want and to address questions and research topics that are the research topics that you've learned to love and to be curious and passionate about throughout your training and informative years of your career. I'm really intrigued by investigative work. I love CSI. My favorite board game is Clue. I like putting pieces together to then get to understand who did it, what happened, why. And so I find research allowing me to basically do the same kind of investigative work. We're trying to put pieces together, understand how things work. Exactly how do you get from an exposure to then the health effect that we're seeing. But what is added on top of that in this particular field, and what is really driving my passion, is that I can do this with the idea that in the end, whatever I find and the process of finding helps and has an impact on public health. So the idea of getting into cancer research allowed me to use my background in chemistry, medicinal chemistry, and investigate questions that are relevant to really all of us, because we are all touched by the effects of cancer through family members or people that we know. It's really something that it's around us and needs to be understood better. It needs to be addressed better, to be treated better, and so on. And so the fact of being able to do this kind of work and have an impact on public life and in having a role in the fight against cancer is what really drives and allows me to be happy to come to the lab and lead the group that I'm leading and be passionate about the work we're doing. A typical day in the lab would start with, we have group meetings every morning, so daily group meetings where we just check in and try to figure out if everybody knows exactly what they're going to do throughout the day. And then each of us has his own set of experiments that have to be run throughout the day. Part of the day is also dedicated to collecting the results and the data from the experiments that we have that have been run, and then put them together, interpret the data, and really understand what their meaning is. And so that leads also sometimes to meetings among part of the group or with me, where we're really going through the results and try to understand exactly what the results are telling us, and therefore also what kind of next steps and next experiments need to be planned in order to better understand and better answer the question that the person in the lab is focusing on at the moment. There is a lot of discussion, a lot of moments in which we read the literature, we try to come up with new ideas, a lot of moments in which we're also doing brainstorming. And so the interesting piece of this is also that there's a lot of creativity that comes into this work. It's not just doing over and over the same experiment, but it's also trying to think, sometimes trying to think out of the box on how we can address certain issues or problems in the experimental plans that we have, or how can we understand and try to really answer specific questions that come from unexpected results that sometimes the lab is presented with. So that is, again, another piece of the typical day that really allows for some creativity and some input that sometimes is not really well, I think, represented or well understood for people that are not part of a lab. Once we have finalized a set of results and we have, again, found an answer to a specific question, usually we report and we disseminate the findings in our scientific community to begin with. So we usually have poster presentations, we have events where seminars, symposiums where people go and present their work. This is both at the internal level within the cancer center or the university, but then also at an national and international level. We are all part of international organizations or national organizations that bring people together at conferences and at specific events where you're called to really present and disseminate the work that you're doing. Those are usually events that are really important because people that may not be familiar with what you're doing can become familiar or can have an interest and can add to your research by asking questions that you may have not thought about, or can start collaborations because they're interested in what you're doing and want to try to see if we can apply the methods that we're using to their question, and so on. So those are usually moments in which networking happens and very good interactions bring to new work, both in terms of new work for the lab, but also new working opportunities for students and postdocs and people that are joining the conferences or the symposia. And then we have another piece. As I said, the work that we do really does have an impact on public health. And so sometimes the things that we do have repercussions on, our community, on the public opinion, or on the public outlets. And so, for instance, the research that we do on alcohol, or the research that we do on tobacco, the research that we do on e-cigarettes, some of our findings have been immediately transferred to public domain through news outlets and so on, because they inform people on what they have to be aware of when using or when consuming this kind of products. And so that is the beauty of part of the research that we do, the fact that, again, has a direct, or can have a direct impact on our community. So what does it take to work in a lab? Well, people who want to try and want to work in doing research in a lab like the one that I direct need to be, first of all, paying a lot of attention to detail, and be, of course, very careful and meticulous in the way that they follow protocols and they follow the steps in doing the experiments. So that piece is really important. Safety is also extremely important, because a lab where we do chemistry, or we work with chemicals, or in our case sometimes we also work with carcinogens, requires requires high level of attention to the safety rules that obviously are communicated to anybody who starts working in a lab from really the first day. So there are a number of rules that need to be followed in order to make sure that the lab work is safe for the person that is performing the experiments, but also for the rest of the group and the people that are potentially walking through the lab or coming by and may not be completely aware of what kind of exposures or chemicals are being used. So definitely there are some rules that need to be followed. But another piece and another point that is really important to mention is that someone that wants to work in a lab, really needs to have a great level of tenacity, and I think that really the passion for this type of work needs to help lead you through it, because research sometimes is truly redoing your search. So keep on searching. You try and you fail. You try and that experiment just didn't give you the results that you were expecting. You try again and that didn't work either. You really have to keep at it in order to be able to finally get to to the results and the outcome that is meaningful and that can help you answer the questions. These are little bags that are placed inside the hood. So this is a hood that is vented in a way that all the chemicals that are volatilized in the chamber here are basically taken off to a filtering system and then off outside of the room, so that people that are working here are not exposed, are not inhaling, or are not being sprayed by anything that is in the hood. So we have biohazard waste, because obviously when you have tips or disposable supplies that you use for running your experiment and you have to dispose of them, they have to be placed in a specific bag that is identifiable and that then is handled, with following a specific protocol in order to make sure that whatever is contained in that bag stays in the bag and does not affect anybody outside of the hood or anybody that is responsible for handling the waste in the building.
Because you're working with some pretty nasty stuff.
Yeah, we are working with solvents, we're working with carcinogens at times, we're working with chemotherapeutic drugs. So all these compounds, all these substances can have an effect if inhaled or if ingested, and therefore we have to be extremely careful. Keep them under the hood and making sure that anything that is used with these chemicals, that has touched this chemical, does not come out of it.
And when you're working here, you have to wear gloves.
Yes, so the PPE, so the protective equipment that is required for people working in a lab are usually a lab coat that protects your garments and the body. You have to wear gloves and you have to wear goggles for when you are working at the hood. Chemical spills happen. They are one of the major safety hazard that we encounter in this lab, and so everything that could lead to a chemical spill is in a double container. That is why the vials, for instance, in the hood are not just sitting there, but they're all in double containers, so that we are trying to make sure that anything that is potentially cause of a spill is contained. But then we have spill kits, so we have some specific kits that can be used in case of emergency to take care of reducing the spread of the spill and contain it. And then obviously there are very specific protocols that the Cancer Center has in place, so that there are people to call and specific units to call so that they can take care of the spill in case it is of proportions that are putting at risk the rest of the lab. So thank you for joining our virtual lab tour. I hope you liked what you've seen. Please reach out to us through our emails or our contacts if you have any question or any interest or any curiosity about what we do and the opportunities that we have. We hope to see you soon at the Masonic Cancer Center.